Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 374. I am your host, Lauren Gray, and yes, the background is a little different, although this time we have some flowers to make it a little bit prettier. We are still dealing with the after effects of the tragedy, which is now Hurricane Ian for Florida. We're located on the east coast of Florida at this time. We're going back every other day kind of thing. So you'll see our backgrounds change over time. Unfortunately, our old office venue background and so forth, it probably won't be the same. It's gone. So we'll go over and figure out a new one. In the meanwhile, though, we have our weekly show that I very much look forward to doing. And being consistent, we've been into it now for, we're in our 9th year. And we've been able to do this every week, regardless of whether I'm in China, Canada, the United States, anywhere, whatever, Australia, whatever, you name it. We've done it all over the world, and we appreciate so very much everyone that watches us regularly each week or listens to us each week when we go live, or also when we simulcast, along with our audio podcast. And for if you're watching on our TV channel, which is also on Roku, Google, Amazon, and Apple. And of course, we always simulcast, as you see here. If you're watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, we're on all of those as well. So, show number 374. I thought we'd keep a little consistent with the topic, specifically going into our season of fourth quarter, being more attuned to more, I wouldn't say traditional marketing, but marketing. We've been so in shock as to how we handle our marketing these past couple of years, obviously. With the emergence of people being able to travel again, our summer surges, our tsunami of last year, our surge this year, inflation, gas rates modifying drive markets, and so forth. We've spent the past couple of months on the show discussing our budget season for 2023, what to plan for, what to anticipate, how to calculate, how to gather data. We've gone through all of those. I want to get more back into the more tangible functionalities of marketing tools, marketing methodology. Last week, we touched a little bit on some of the hard decisions. Our topic last week was related to making hard versus popular choices, the politics of things that it's hard to say this is the norm, let's do something different, or let's be innovative, or let's be the first to do something. It's very hard in the political process of internal business to do that. We talk about the fact that there's 3 primary questions that get asked at every level that money is being delegated for, and that is how much will we make, how much will it cost, and who else is doing it are the 3 high influence factors associated with making these types of decisions as to strategies and cost of strategies and so forth. And I talked a little bit about last week the transition of what used to be non-traditional is now traditional. And we have to rethink what is traditional now into what we think will be traditional in the future. We discussed about the changes in Facebook, where it was a mainstay of what it did. It was a persistent part of people's marketing strategy, marketing budgets. And that has now since changed in its scope and its value. And we talked about other players in the market. We talked about the predominance of TikTok's sheer volume of time that people are spending. It's the number 1 site that people spend time on. And you consider who it's competing against with Google and Facebook and so forth. That's quite a feat to be able to accomplish. So we have to rethink how we're doing marketing. So long introduction to our topic this week. And our topic this week is going into the advertisement roads less traveled, the channels of opportunity that exist that are not in your traditional perspective as to your Google ad campaigns, generic keyword development, text ads, image ads, not into your traditional Bing ads, Facebook ads. These are the channels that are now, quote, traditional in our strategies of online marketing. Obviously, as other parts of those things, CRM, there's an integrated process between the tools that we have for data and communication and the vehicles for discovery and communication. All of these are kind of rutted into what people perceive them these past few years. Well, there is dynamics that are changing the value proposition of this. I'm not saying don't do Facebook. I'm saying that you might want to do Facebook and other things when it comes to a strategy based upon what you're trying to push. So let me bring this into a little bit clearer focus. We're in fourth quarter. We're dealing primarily with holiday season at this point. As we've talked many times over data and history of data, there are 2 primary travel types of that people tend to take on average. I'm talking about the U.S. domestic primarily, although a lot of this is inferred to other people or other countries as well for their travel plans. But pretty much the domestic U.S. has on average 2 travels two adventure travels that they do each year. Now, this is exclusion of business travel and what have you. One is a rather lengthier stay, and usually it's associated with summer and or spring and have a duration of days. And the second is primarily related to holiday. Right now, it's anticipated that 43 to 47%, excuse me, 43 to 47% of all Americans will be traveling during the holiday season between Thanksgiving and New Year's. That's an astronomically large number. Um, that's for this year. It's always been high, but I never really remember a number being that high for the anticipated travel plans of people. Now, there's already influencing factors on people's travel decisions for fourth quarter. We are dealing with a variation in fuel costs because of the reduction of oil production that just recently hit the news, which is going to have an impact on cost of fuel for the holiday flight season and a cost of fuel for drive market season, are two primary methodologies of people getting to us. Because of that, there will be an influence on their budgeting, as we discussed in our budget discussions on the live show. And this goes back to, I think, show number 362 and 363. We talked about the dynamics of budget segmentation, the average mean costs with travel, and the percentages associated with the cost of transportation, cost of accommodations, cost of entertainment, that goes into a total budget based on income levels of people traveling. So it's going to have a negative impact because, yes, they're still going to travel, as apparent by the demand interest that was just announced in the news. But as to what they get to do in their travels or how much they get to spend on the things that they don't have much control over is going to be a variable. If they cost them for gas to get somewhere, then it's going to take less money. It's going to take money out of their ability to spend for entertainment or maybe accommodations, and vice versa. So we have to be very price sensitive, what our revenue team talks about, as to what we can actually demand by rate for the demand to our market. But this off-road or roads less traveled advertisement is an opportunity for us to begin to cultivate and culture a relationship with people that aren't using the traditional modalities of discovery. And as we discussed many times, the progression of our engagement with our guests goes from a discovery phase to educational phase to a conversion phase, post-choice selection, or ZMOT, zero moment of transaction. Those are the three primary chunks. People equate it to a funnel. Yes, you can segment it up into other variations or segments within that, but pretty much it's what's out there, what do I want to know about what I discover out there, and then what do I want to choose to purchase, are the three fundamental step processes that go on. In that, there are usages of communication and exposure that each platform has its value for. We talk very much about how social has the precursor to most of your paid ad campaigns, because people engagement level might be through the discovery process of content that you're sharing, your website content, and how well it's a place for authenticity for people to discover when they begin to look at things that they're interested in doing. This is where that resides. Also, what resides out there in that campaign space is your OTAs. And one of the tools I want to talk about today is MetaSearch. That discovery process of what's out there and what's available in that education and discovery phase is very high level. It takes a lot of money because you're dealing with an exposure to a large number of people, of which most of them won't actually follow the process and potentially purchase. So the mystical ROI calculation, which has turned into much more of a benchmark than it should be, prevents you from marketing at those points. So because of that, you have to look at channels that create engagement that all funnel towards the river. It's like creeks of a stream that go to a river goes to the ocean. You're feeding this progression of general area to specific point, which is purchase. So let's kind of go through some of the tools that are not as familiar to some or not as first of mind for people when it comes to their marketing strategy. We'll start with some of the ones that are more related to the core elements. Now, everybody has Google ad campaigns. Okay, they have their ads that they put on Google, usually text ads. They could be call to action ads with phone numbers. They could be image ads with contests, special promotion offers, whatever you're using it for. People are very familiar with Google ads. What they're not often familiar with is two variations to that. One, the first is display advertising. Display advertising, most people are tepid about getting involved with because there's a large cost with a very marginal direct return. And this is where attribution values come in. Unfortunately, everybody wants to say, I spent the dollar here, that's where I made this dollar here. It doesn't always work that way. as we've talked about on previous shows, the attribution model can be that they touched this, my website, they touched this, which was my ad, they touched this, which was my social, then they went over and purchased. Well, if you're in the attribution model of last click attribution, then the last one was social, so social produced that revenue. Not true, because of all the things prior to it. And there's different models. There is what frequency model, time decay model, last click, first click. Those are some of the more well-known ones. Um, I tend to like a combination of frequency and time decay, meaning that the more somebody went to a single source it should be valued higher, as also as time goes on, less engagement with a source diminishes its value. So you have a more accurate representation of what was the strongest influencing channel that created the conversion. Doesn't mean it was the actual one that converted. It might have been the last one before it did. But if you look at the whole string of it, how often it was used, and over the course of the entire time stretch of that attribution from first touch to the last point of purchase, how often was it engaged with? That gives you a more accurate perspective of its value proposition when deciding where to spend more money. So, display advertising, what is it? Well, it's Google, and it can be Bing, and other resources, affiliate market differences. We're not going to get too off the beaten path on this one, where you basically are that advertisement that gets shown because of the generalities of your content to the generalities of who you're trying to get in front of. You're broadcasting more with display advertising. You're showing up in places that you feel that your demographics or your personas of people that are wanting to potentially be interested in your product are at, websites that they're looking at that have nothing to do with your website, content places, news sources, that by advertising on them brings awareness to them that, oh wow, that hotel's at the place I'm interested in. How cool is that? You're and there's targeting that you do with display advertising. It's just not a blind shot of what you spend it on. You can target very well what you're doing in display advertising, but ROI is completely different when used as a measuring stick compared to your more traditional Google advertisement, because ROI is not a high number. If you're looking at thresholds that I need a 5-to-1, 6-to-1 ROI or 4-to-1, this wouldn't be it. There are times where you're at 0.5, 0.7, 0.8. What you have to look at when you're doing display advertising is, unlike your traditional advertising that you're in front of 1,000 people, let's say, you're in front of 100,000 people with display advertising. So that 0.5, 0.8 of click-through is now representing much larger numbers. The difficulty of that is that it's not at a point where they might be immediately willing to make a purchase decision. It might be that they follow what you've advertised to find out more, go into the education phase, but they're still not ready to convert. So you're not getting that high conversion, even if you get that traffic acquisition. So the display advertising works on the idea of huge, large numbers of people exposure will eventually translate to the core conversion numbers that are very relevant to the money value of what you spent the display advertisement for. But again, it's a road less traveled when it comes to advertising. Another one that I've been harking about now for these past couple of weeks is YouTube advertising. And YouTube advertising is just that. It's a venue. It is the second largest search engine. Okay, it's owned by Google, but there's Google search, obviously, and you have YouTube. YouTube. I think of all the ways you use YouTube. I want to know how to with this appliance, how to plug this in, or how to fix this, or how to glue this, or whatever. There's a lot of how-to stuff, a lot of product review stuff. There's a lot of it's the venue of people to discover rich media on, and this capability of filtering who sees your ads, and there's a variety of ads that you can put into YouTube, means that you can address it. You can have cancelable ads. You've seen those where they roll in front of a video, and as soon as they hit skip, people hit skip. Well, you don't have to pay for those, but if you're intriguing enough in the few seconds of people seeing it, it is a very high engagement. We've done very good successful ad campaigns in YouTube just recently for branded mid-scale hotels, okay, limited service hotels and as well, that has produced great results when it comes to traffic and the influencing of traffic and the conversion of that traffic because of the discoverability of the hotel, because we're targeting geography, demography, behavioral. We're able to do all of that within the context of YouTube advertising. The trick, and we had this discussion on the previous shows about rich media development and usages of rich media and cultivating rich media and all the rules around rich media and being able to use it and so forth, is having the content to make ads. You have to make relatively good communication visually with this, and not everybody's skilled in the editing process or in the cultivation process of it. And this requires you to either go to third party or educate or put bandwidth into your own organization to do it. Tough one to do, but incredibly valuable to do, and a very underutilized resource simply because it is a hard resource for other people to have. So if you lean into this, and we talk about this as a budgeting value for next 2023, when we talk about budget assignments of value, is produce and get content that you can use to literally use for YouTube advertising. And not to get too far off the path of YouTube advertising, it's also the value of what you would use it for other mediums like Instagram, like TikTok, if it's a realm of demographics that you're needing to get into, like Pinterest and others that have visual content. And we'll talk more about those in a little bit. The other tool, and there's several of them here, I'm going to kind of go push through most of these, is programmatic advertising. And this is more sales funnel related. It's retargeting. It's if I see you here, I'm able to present myself over here. If you saw me on this website as like a display advertisement, then I can create an engagement with you that will re-expose you to more of my ads in other places you go. What's going on with programmatic? Well, we know that the third-party cookie system is on the decline. Now, Google has pushed their window of shutting it completely off out farther. Apple has already shut off the ability for third-party cookie, which has created the issues with Facebook and so forth. But this relies on the ability of continuity, of being able to say, I know you went to this site, even though it's not my site, because I had an advertisement on it. But that allows me to follow you to another place you go to present yet another ad or the same ad or just something that relates to what's available on that to remind you that I'm still a product that you should be interested in. Here's the good and the bads of this. It is costly to be in programmatic because you're really banking on the connectivity and remembrance of the people. And it takes 3 to 5 engagements of seeing your content for people to be connected to your content. So you have the need for repetition, which repetition equals cost. You have to keep paying to be in the space. You can't just push, get exposure, and then wait for that exposure to translate into conversions. You have to be persistent in your exposure, which is what creates the capability of them to be engaged enough to want to potentially purchase. Here's the rub. Some people, even though they weren't interested, aren't interested in you, and your persistence of showing up in front of them turns into an annoyance. This goes to the frequency control associated with programmatic and retargeting. And that is, you have to know when to not advertise anymore to people. It's cut bait. It's not going to happen. Usually 3 to 5 engagements with a lack of engagement back is the cutoff. Unfortunately, most marketers don't do that. They bang it like a big red button because they produce artificial numbers that are presented to you, the client, that say, look at all this engagement of people and talking with their ads and so forth. All you're doing is burning people's interest and spending a lot of money, and they're justifying it by amping up the frequency of engagements and artificially showing you numbers that don't produce. At the end of the day, you can't bring that to the bank and cash the check. The numbers that they're producing on engagements and impressions and click-throughs, but no actual conversion. That's the what you bring to the bank, right? So you need to make sure that you have it translating into revenue. And that's where programmatic and retargeting has to be controlled in such a way that frequency doesn't burn out engagement, as does messaging has to be relevant for the broadness of the audience that you're talking to. So that's programmatic retargeting. Some of the other things that are out there that I'm beginning to play with, I have set up but have not launched yet TripAdvisor's new TripAdvisor Express advertising platform. As you've known from listening to me on the show for all these years, I'm not a massive fan of TripAdvisor. I believe they jumped the shark a few years back when they started putting profits, or when they were public, obviously, but putting profits above of the core of what their platform was based on, which was consumer sentiment, consumer insight related to products. When you could pay to be on top of a list rather than have the list warranted based on the scores of reviews that were there, that turned to me that they jumped the shark, and that it wasn't to their benefit to have done it, and it wasn't to the benefit of the users for having done it. With that being said, it is still a strong influencing force on people's purchase decisions. People have learned to cut through the clutter associated with TripAdvisor. They can read the negative comments for people that probably they figure are competitors, the positive comments that are probably your own employees, and that happy medium ground of reviews to say, on average, this is what people are thinking. They keep referring to bad bathrooms. So that's probably a reality. The pool's small. That's probably a reality. There's a way that people, their BS indicators, have figured out how to read. All of us have figured out how to read TripAdvisor stuff. It's still a great resource for content. It still dominates SERP space, search engine result pages, Google and Bing and so forth, because of its presence of content. Well, they've created a new advertising platform that allows you, before they tried to use it through their business model, that you had to pay exorbitant amounts of money to have a business listing. And from that, you could control more of your own content. For some hotels, it was great. We talked about the fact that if you're already in your top 10 in your market, you don't need it. If you're in your top 25, you don't need to advertise. If you're up to your top 25, you could advertise to keep above the fold, so to speak. If you're not in the top 25 when it comes to review to your market, you're in a struggle, because even though you can advertise and be on top of the list, your review scores are going to make it where people aren't going to purchase you, even though you're showing up for them, because they're going to look and go, why do I want to stay there? Everybody says this place is a bad place, so I'm not going to go there. So advertising in TripAdvisor has the caveat of being that if you're a quality product in a high volume market of that you can't show up high, but your reviews are high enough, advertisement is a strong play. Also, too, with this new TripAdvisor ad platform, because people use TripAdvisor for discovery process as well, remember, discovery, education, conversion, it gives you the chance to put yourself in front of people when they're thinking about their primary interests. Like, do I want to go north or do I want to go south? Do I want to go there or do I want to go here? If you're showing content about yourself at that stage that it piques their interest, it's a high volume if you can target their interests correctly. So the TripAdvisor Express ad platform has a lot of the it has some of the features associated with how Google ads work, how Bing ads work, with their filtering capabilities, the geographies, their interests, like Facebook in that sense and so forth. All of them are very similar in that sense. I'll let you know as shows to come as to how successful, how easy, how successful the programs that I'm about ready to launch run. But the platform's out there. Not a lot of people are completely familiar with it. A lot of people may not be even aware of it. Again, advertisement road less travel. Another one I want to throw out there, and you might go and give me the scholarly look, is OTA advertising. I have watched many, many companies use this as a crutch. Why should we spend all of our money doing our own advertising when we're fighting against these guys? We should just advertise on them. And to a certain logic, that is true at certain times. When you can't afford to be in front of mind at the discovery phase, at the early engagements of people, this is when it's great to ride coattails. Let the big boys, the Expedias, the hotels, the Trivagos, they're the ones that are advertising in that space to be used by people to facilitate their then education and then acquisition so they can get their commissions. If you can advertise on those platforms so that they find you interestingly enough that they're going to look outside of the platform to possibly convert, or stay in the platform and go through the whole process with the Expedia or hotels or Trivago or whatever, kayak, then so be it. At least you get the booking compared to your competitor getting the booking, or for them to go elsewhere. So there are times where it's better to ease off on the throttle. Well, I kind of like doing this as a NASCAR analogy. You only have to be in the lead of the race for that split second at the very end. Everything up to that point doesn't really matter. How many times you lead the laps, how many times you're in front of the laps, how many people you're in front of when you're running around it's great theater, but it's not about winning the race. Winning the race is being first across that line at that split second. That's winning the race. So in your marketing and advertising strategy, always being on top, always being number one, always being in the forefront is not always the strongest strategy. Being in place and being in the area that gives you the opportunity to leap ahead and be that conversion, that's the strategy. And that goes in, again, the whole NASCAR analogy. And it's funny, I mean, I'm not a huge NASCAR fan, I enjoy it, but it's not one of these things where I'm, woo, But the idea of drafting, following, staying competitive, but not too far behind, not too far ahead, not using up too much fuel, or all this other, are great analogies. I did this at a conference circuit a few years back that made a lot of sense to people. It's just you have to be the one that crosses the line, that split second at the end. So that's the idea of OTA advertising, is to be in the competitive space so that at the right moment, you're present when they're making a conversion or a ZMA, their moment of transaction purchase. Next one I'll move into, one that we've talked many, many times before, I'm a huge ardent fan of, and that is meta search advertising. It continues to flourish and grow. Dean Schmidt, who works with me and head Basecamp Meta, and he's been on the show for a number of years with us, was talking about how Google has just now begun to modify their ability to target geographically. Rather than, I mean, we've known we've been able to isolate areas by saying this country or that country. Then it got better by saying this area of the country versus this area of the country, DMAs and states and so forth. It's even gotten better than that, very much Google-esque about saying put a pin in the map and radiate out from it and so forth, much what we're more familiar with, which opens up a whole world of things like Drive Market and stuff that you can target people that you know are coming because of Drive Market and make sure you're showing up for them and not for the people that really aren't going to be taking advantage of coming to your market, even though they might be interested in it, they're not going to make the distance. There's some really cool stuff going on with metasearch. Metasearch has a huge value. When Google opened up organic metasearch, where you just by being there can get business, it's a huge game changer when it comes to being competitive to other OTAs in the same space trying to vie for consumers' positioning and interest. You can show up in the same space. Like I said, NASCAR, you're in the middle of the pack. It just happened to be that one that crosses the line at the very end. So metasearch, not going to dive on too much because we keep hitting that conversation on a regular basis, but it's an area that people are like, they're not knowledgeable enough to make the decision and or they're not familiar enough with what they would be doing it or knowing how to do it to actually step into that space. I always ask me about those questions. Our hospitality marketing club talks a lot about metasearch. Next one that I've talked on a few times before, again, a road of advertisement, less travel, is OTT advertisement, over-the-top advertising. This is the TV advertising, the smart TV advertising, where the ability to target on this stuff is phenomenal. It's not like the old days of TV advertisement. And I went through the whole process when Google started doing extra, where they, this goes back to 2006, 2007, where they're offering radio and TV advertisement via Google. It was a short-lived program, but it was incredibly cool and fun. Where they're buying remnants, time slots that you could advertise through Google. And Google basically took the hit on the cost to offer it as an option to them to get people to work on their platform more. But we're doing TV advertising, but it was blanket. It's like the best I could segment back then was Fox's regionality, like West Coast, Midwest, Northeast, Southeast. So I was in a blanket area. Now it is completely demographically targeted, completely behavioral targeted, and it has nothing to do with which show you're sponsoring. The old adage of TV is like, and this show brought to you by Crispy Weeds. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about advertisement where literally in my smart TV at my house, my next door neighbor does not see the same ad I see watching the same show because my demographic profile is different than their demographic profile. And the ad that is tailored to my demographic profile plays for me and not for them. That's how targeted this is. So just imagine being able to be on TV and being targeted to your feeder markets, your local market for brand awareness. The aspects of OTT advertising are phenomenal. Plus, it's a very live dashboard that you get to use. So you can actually watch people's engagement with your show. So your call to actions can be promotionally based, brand based. You could really do whatever it is you want to do from a very visual perspective. And that's the caveat. Having the rich media to be able to perform at that level. Having a commercial worthy production. And it's very similar to your YouTube. In all honesty, if you do a good YouTube advertisement, 15 to 30 seconds, that's what you do. You have it to 90 seconds, but at that point, do you really want to watch a long ad? Most people don't. Unless it's so connected to them that they are hungry to know what to act on. And there's so many new variations that you can do with these ads. You can put QR codes for immediate engagement. You can just simply have a browser or let them know that they should look for you or what have you. There's lots of ways to communicate on the ads. It's a whole burgeoning area, which is really fascinating. But that is OTT advertisement. I want to throw in some other ones that we've mentioned in ways before, but I want to reemphasize the value proposition, one of which is Waze advertising. With the newfound need to travel back and forth as much as I am between going back to the tragedy of what Ian has created in my area in Cape Coral and Fort Myers and Sanibel and all the rest, and then coming here to the East Coast. So we try to keep with the recovery process. I've been using Waze because it's one of the more informative traffic updating kind of functions. I have an Apple, and I know the Google Maps on Androids work very much with Waze-esque information. It'll tell you updates of things and so forth. But Waze is still a very community-driven platform. And I've run numerous Waze campaigns in times past. I'm impressed with what they've improved upon. And that is not only do you get to have your own little bubble on the map, but honestly, if I'm driving, unless it's on a bigger screen than my phone, I'm probably not really seeing the bubbles. But they now have drop-down capability. Hey, you're next to Cane's Chicken. There's a coupon for it if you want it. It'll give you a discount. It'll even tell you the quantity of what it is. And it's a drop down onto the little map thing. And you want to go there, and just tap the button, and it'll reroute you to that place if that's what you're interested in. It allows a whole new level of engagement for Drive Market. I remember not too many years ago where we're like, man, if you could just put a roadside sign that says turn off here and you'll get a hot breakfast or stay at our hotel or whatever it is. That's what roadside values were for. And then we thought, wow, how crazy it would be if you could do geo-targeting that as people driving through your area, you could pop up a notification that says, hey, you're right next to the biggest ball of twine. Pull off on exit 12 and take a left and we're right there. We thought about it. Well, you literally have that ability with Waze now. That as people come into a radius that you've decided with your marketing and targeting, and with the filtering of who you are, not just anybody that's coming into that area, but literally by proximity and then by demography. So I only want to let people know this if they follow these criteria. It makes it very powerful for proximity marketing, Drive Market especially, where you can get in front of people by using Waze. And it's not, the volume of traffic is crazy. I mean, if you even look at Google My Business as to the amount of people that look your business up on Google My Business, the numbers are huge. And plus, it gives you a really cool map to show you where people are looking from to know how to get to you. A whole nother story in that conversation. But Google My Business is another road less traveled. Advertisement of Google My Business, the locality, the location information, the proximity targeting you can do with Google My Business, Google Local Advertisement. Very strong. Waze is in that same vein. Waze is another great proximity marketing tool that you can use. Going to our last final three of these, we have Pinterest advertising. It's often the forgotten partner of social advertising. One, because it's very visual, and not everybody has great visual. Once you get past the glamorous pictures that people have, the glamour shots we talked about last week and the week before about rich media, where, okay, it's a empty porte-cochere or it's a lobby with actors and actresses smiling at the front desk with a smiling front desk. Those are not engagement. They're not personal. They have no soul to them. You need other pictures. You need other stuff. You need people with, it's kind of like your social media pictures, not nameless, faceless people doing stuff, but rather constructive content related to you, like the content that you share about things that are near you, the content that you share about things that are happening around you, the content that's shared about the uniqueness of what your facilities or amenities are. That's the stuff that feeds Pinterest. You can create books on them that allows you to have different aspects of it. So not everything's just a hodgepodge of a variety of things. It could be, over here is our amenities, over here is local interest, over here is culinary things you should know, local adventures you should know about. You can make storyboards about all these different pieces of content that people can discover in Pinterest visually. And that's the key element. Visually is where you have to invest the work. I know I'm beating on a drum on this, but the visual representation of your content is the new transition that 2022 is probably going to lead into the most when it comes to the differences of traditional ways we've done stuff to the ways we're doing stuff now. You need to create visual component, visual content. But Pinterest advertising, another cool thing that many people don't know about Pinterest, Pinterest doesn't connect to other databases. Everybody on Pinterest is on Pinterest. They don't pull content from other sources, data, and things like this. Everybody that is on Pinterest is a closed ecosystem. They're logged into Pinterest. It is Pinterest content people, okay? Which makes it very fascinating in that sense, because that means you're talking to a dedicated, demographically identifiable audience, okay? Couple other, going into the other aspect, one other one is Yelp advertising. I've never been a fan of Yelp. I felt that they dropped the ball early on when they first started. They could have been, should have been more than what they were, and they ended up being less than what they could have been. Their advertisement campaign platforms were terrible. They had no way of mitigating your budget, so you could blow your budget in a day because there's no way to control the volume of interest. People could hijack who you were, defer who you were, jeopardize who you were, steal who you were. You could advertise for things you weren't. It was a mess. They've improved a good portion of that. I still think it has problems, but from a value source, if you have amenities that are relatable to Yelp, and that goes into spas, it goes into golfing, it goes into retail, goes into your restaurant primarily, obviously. And it does represent hotels. It tried to be that. It never became that, but hotels are still in there. I wouldn't rely on it saying, oh, if I only have a hotel function, I need to be in Yelp. I would base it upon how many people in your market that you're competing with are in Yelp to know whether you should be in there to make sure you have a balanced perspective for everybody looking compared to your competitors. But Yelp has a good functionality to it. I would take it with a grain of salt as to how often you use it and what you use it for. But it's a strong platform for especially restaurants and food service outlets and other amenity services that you're offering to have a presence there should you have them. And one of the last ones I want to speak about is, of course, SMS advertising. Okay. Um, it's a touchy platform to advertise on. It should be primarily, as we've talked about many times, a communication platform. But through that communication, you can convey additional information. If you can create engagement, we've had very strong success with creating a tiered relationship through an SMS program where they got incentives to share the ability for us to communicate with them via SMS for discounts. Their membership relationship with us as a club member for a hotel went and proved that they always got standard base amenities because they were willing to give us the opportunity to communicate with them. And of course, to treat that communication at the high value premium that it is, because SMS messaging still has an opening rate in the 90 percentiles and up, okay, was to use it sparingly, specifically for what the people were interested in getting information on. Part of the SMS messaging for advertisement in general was to say, what are you interested in us sending you messages on? Last minute deals, seasonal stuff, destination stuff, what? So that when we do use the SMS method of communication and advertising, that we're not sending you uninteresting stuff, that we're sending you what you asked us to send you. So the caveat of advertising and communicating with SMS is to have it very tailored to what it is that they're willing to have you communicate to them on that medium for, because it is a high engagement platform channel. Okay. So it's a tool that is not often used to its full capacity. And then on the other side of it, it's a tool that is abused in its capacity. But it is but definitely a part of advertisement road less traveled. So let's recap what our basic gatherings of these. There's more, obviously. We didn't talk about CRM. We didn't talk about sales funnels in its own separate right. I mean, that's kind of thrown to programmatic or retargeting to a degree. But there are a variety of sales funnels that are related to multiplicities of channels. You get an email for this, and based on your engagement with that email and the duration of the time it took for you to engage with that email, it might trigger a retargeting on Facebook that changes to a type of display advertisement on advertising for Google that might turn into an OTT advertisement on your demographics. It has lots of interesting combinations to it. There's CRM for a whole variety of things we already use it for, which is, pre-arrival, duration of stay, post stay, and so forth. But there's so many more ways of using it. We didn't talk about it. But to give you an idea, here's a recap of what we talked about today. We talked about display advertising with Google primarily, YouTube advertising and Google primarily, programmatic advertising, which is retargeting, the new TripAdvisor ad platform, the OTA advertising, the metasearch advertising, the OTT advertising, the Waze advertising, the Pinterest advertising, the Yelp advertising, and the SMS advertising. These channels represent a good accumulation of advertisement of the road less traveled because they're not considered, in most cases, some people do consider them in their mainstay, but not everyone. But they're the more adventurous, I would say advanced, but to a degree they are, modalities of advertising. I mean, there's clients I have that are very much still struggling with the basics of understanding what Google advertising, how it works, what does it produce, how does it produce it, what are the variations of ads and so forth. Still very much at a base level of understanding. And they understand Facebook and they understand the basics of it. But again, how to do it and so forth, they don't. But they understand the contributions and they're worried about the revenues from it and so forth, which is why ROI is such a constant, persistent discussion, or we should be talking more about channel contribution. Top line, channel contribution. We've had that discussion on the live show many times. So with all of that, these are the variations of things that to be ahead of your competitors or to be at pace with your competitors, should they be also advanced enough with this. These are the venues of opportunity that exist for you. We didn't talk about TikTok advertisement. We didn't talk about that. We didn't talk about Instagram advertisement. Why? Because it's a very complex conversation, because the first predication of it is to deny you interest in doing it simply because it's new and shiny. And I know that sounds really weird for me to say, but you're being a new and shiny person with toys and squirrel, that kind of stuff. But the idea that TikTok has a complex value proposition. If you're going to be there, there are conditions about being there. We talked briefly about it in last week's show a little bit too. Consistency is one of the most important aspects of this. You also have to have rich media that is supportable to what you're consistently communicating about. If you don't have those two things, doing it is counterproductive. Doing it is actually a detriment because people will perceive you in a very negative light of your feeble market-esque attempt at trying to get in front of people. It's like an old dude like me walking up trying to be hip to young kids like, hey, dude, word, whatever. I don't even know the words. People are going to be looking, it's like, dude, you got gray on your beard. You shouldn't be using those words. So don't. So the idea of doing TikTok when that is not a venue that you can actually sustain, and more importantly, doesn't have the demographics that you need to sell. Because after all, it's great to think you're going to get in front of a 15-year-old, hoping that you keep in communication with them until they're a 22-year-old and they need hotel spaces. Okay, it's not a reality. There'll be other things that come up. There are other things that will come up. There's things that they've long since forgotten when they first were interested in stuff. And who's interested in a hotel when you're 15, 16 years old? That being said, I'm not saying that the only people using TikTok are 15, 16-year-olds, but the age skew is lower than it is higher. Okay, there's not as many 65-year-olds using TikTok as there are 15-year-olds. I'm not saying 65 doesn't use it, just saying there's a lot more 15-year-olds that do. So with that in mind, things like TikTok have to have a grain of salt or a caveat to them that it has to be, you maintain it at a level that is engagement value wise, and that you're consistent with it, because persistency of being there is what generates the engagements that would be viable from a business perspective. And if you disagree with me, I would love to hear from you about that. You can knock me off the top of the hill anytime. You can reach out to me at lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. And that is the same email that if you have any feedback about our live show, our podcast, any of the replays, our hospitality marketing club, our TV channel, if you have content you think that'd be viable for the hospitality marketing channel, please let me know. I always love putting up new content for hotels, restaurants, what have you. That's what the channel is for. It's a TV channel that's on Roku. Go to Roku, look for Hospitality Channel. There's our TV channel. This show is always on the free side of that. There's a pay gateway, which is included for Hospitality Marketing Club members. They get it for free. It's a part of their membership with us. And you go to hospitalitymarketing.club to sign up. There is a question because it's for advanced and intermediate or journeyman users of marketing. This isn't a club for people that are just trying to understand hospitality marketing. This is for active practitioners of hospitality marketing, people that are already in the space that have advanced or intermediate questions, and they want peers to communicate and collaborate with about more advanced questions. We're not here to explain what PPC stands for. There's plenty of base training out there that you can buy from nickel and dime a dozen on training you on what digital marketing is about, and some of it hospitality. In fact, I have a book, Hospitality for Hospitality Marketers. Non-hospitality marketers, excuse me, I can't even say the name of my book, but it's a book about hospitality marketing for non-hospitality. The book explains what the industry of hospitality is for people that aren't from hospitality. That's what the book is, Hospitality for Non-Hospitality Marketers. Wow, that was painful, wasn't it? So with it, on our club, we have advanced conversations. We have people that are talking about the multiplicities of ad variations. We're talking about the uniqueness value of these channels. We get some very good GA4 conversion conversations, JSON coding conversations. There's all different levels of engagement. So if you sign up at hospitalitymarketing.club, I'll send you a quiz, 10 questions, have to score 90, 9 out of 10 have to be right. If you can, that means you have a working knowledge base that would make it where this isn't a waste of your time. We're not charging for membership now for the rest of the year to build up our community and to get people that are seeing the value of being engaged. Start sometime next year, we'll convert that over where there's a payment requirement. Not everybody that signs up now would have to pay in the future, depending upon their engagement with the community. It's kind of like a carrot on a stick. It's like the more you're engaged with the community, less of a reason why I should charge you, because you're a driving force of the community. That's our premise of doing this community for Hospitality Marketing Club. For our I Love Lucy rerun platform for this live show and for our podcast, you can go to hospitalitychannel.tv. They're in sequence, in time. You see all the old shows from all the years and so forth. You can watch it. Literally, we have enough production that you can watch us for over a month nonstop, 24 hours a day. and you'll see our smiley, talking, happy faces. If you want to get signed up, it's also an app on Apple iOS and Android. Hospitality channels there as well. But if you want to on the website, to go look at it, you can look at talktravel.tv. That's talktravel.tv. That'll bring you to the interface for the hospitality marketing channel. And there you can sign up if you wish to go and get content from behind the wall or watch this live show in repetition. So with that, that's pretty much everything I have to say about all of what we're doing to it. I hope that we'll talk to you again as we have been every week. We're in our 9th year in 39 countries and counting. We translate this to 11 languages. We'll re-simulcast this live show at 11:30 a.m. Wednesday morning, Sydney, Australian time for our APAC friends, and 11:30 a.m. Wednesday morning, London time for our EU friends. So that because this is some odd hours, although we get lots of people that watch us live on from around the world at really bizarre times. And thank you all for watching. And I'm sorry, with only one computer screen now instead of the two I usually have, I can't see if anybody's chatting on our other channels until I'm done with the show and I go back and look. So if there's any questions that came up on any of the simulcasts that you're watching, I promise to get back with you. Any comments or anything, again, you can send them to lauren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com, and I answer each and every email. So with that, thank you so very much for your time today, and the privilege of your time, really. And I look forward to talking to you all next week for show number 375, next Friday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern U.S. time. Until then, stay safe and happy. Thank you.